Hello, and welcome to another edition of Fright Night Classics. My name is Bill, and I am your host. I thought that for now I would do something a little bit different. In previous videos, you've heard me talk about watching a lot of horror films for the first time as a youngster on television. So I thought I'd take the opportunity to use this edition of Fright Night Classics and take a look back at some of the great movie showcase programs from the New York metropolitan area that we had available to us as kids that enabled us to view so many great horror films at the time. Those of you who are not from the New York metro area, hopefully will get something out of this, and those of you who did grow up in the area at the time will get a kick out of taking a little trip down memory lane. Again, as kids growing up in the 1960s and the 1970s, those of us in the New York metro area, I lived my whole life in the state of New Jersey. We had wonderful access at just the right time to horror films of all kinds that played regularly on television. The big day was Saturday, where basically from morning through late at night, the TV would be just full of horror films of all types for us to choose from. We pretty much could get our horror fill from every station that was on the air at the time. We only had seven stations, but it just seemed that everything was on those seven stations back in the day. However, the big three monster movie showcase programs were really the ones that gave us our horror education as kids. The first one was Creature Features, which aired on WNEW TV Channel 5. This was probably my least favorite of the big three. You could catch Creature Features every Saturday at 12 noon, and at various times you could also catch a second one Saturday nights at 8:30. And Creature Feature aired early on a lot of the Universal classics, then shifted to American International films, a lot of science fiction, big bug films from the 50s, independent features like The Indestructible Man. I also remember seeing Richard Boone's I Bury the Living. I saw a film called The Maze on Creature Features. So it did offer a great alternative, and I did check it out from time to time. But of the big three, it was probably my least favorite. As one of the big three monster movie showcases back in the 1970s, WPIX TV Channel 11's Chiller Theater was as well known for its classic claymation opening as it was for its fright films. It's one of the most fondly remembered New York City movie showcases ever. Chiller had a long history, if not a vast array of films to air. Though it started in the 1960s, my memories of the series are from its second run, which was from 1971 to 1982. The one downside to the showcase was that it ran less than 150 films during its life, which made for many repeat airings. Think about it this way: Channel 9's Fright Night had more than double the amount of movies that Chiller had, but back in the day, it just really didn't matter. We were monster kids, so we watched no matter how many times a film aired. Chiller was a Saturday night staple, though it aired at various times. 7 p.m., 8:30 p.m., 11 p.m., 11:30 p.m., midnight. It was all over the map. No matter what the time, we still managed to find it. Some Saturdays you would get a chiller double dip, first at 8:30 p.m. and then again at midnight. Though it didn't have a large number of films in its canon, the series was instrumental in introducing various types of horror to eager youngsters. Euro horrors like Black Sabbath, horrors of the Black Museum, and Frankenstein's Bloody Terror. Classics like The Lodger from 1944, Dementia 13, and Curse of the Demon. Low budget stinkers like Dracula vs. Frankenstein and Return from the Past, as well as a variety of Vincent Price and Roger Corman films. The claymation opening, it was a perfect mood setter. It just really created the proper tone to get you set for the night's viewing. It's arguably Channel 11's most popular movie showcase of all time, and it really is one that is fondly remembered by those of us who grew up in the day and were fortunate enough to watch it. Fright Night is probably one of the most remembered and most loved movie showcase programs from the New York metro area of all time. I have yet to come across anyone of viewing age at the time who does not remember it. It holds a special place in many people's lives, and for a very good reason. Simply put, it was one of the most unique and versatile movie showcase programs of its era, as well as one that offered the widest variety of films of any monster movie showcase at the time. It had an amazing run on WOR TV, Channel 9, running from 1973 to 1987, most famously every Saturday night at 1 a.m., immediately following Championship Wrestling. Of the big three monster movie showcases in the New York area at the time, the aforementioned Creature Features and Chiller, Fright Night is by far my favorite. I did like Creature Features and Chiller, but Fright Night was more to my tastes and offered the widest variety of horror films you could ever hope for. As a matter of fact, by the mid to late 70s, Fright Night really was a drive-in theater or a midnight horror theater right in your own living room. Much of the credit for its programming goes to Lawrence Casey, who was the station's programming manager at the time. The types of movies appearing on Fright Night ran the gamut from old Universal horrors to Mexican horrors to Euro horrors to movies fresh from the drive-in circuit. As a matter of fact, when Fright Night first aired, it concentrated on the old Universal films before gradually shifting to more quote-unquote notorious fare. How it was done is anybody's guess, but there were times when the more violent films that aired had little or no cuts at all. Fright Night's time slot did shift. Early on, starting at 12 midnight. It also ran at 1:30 a.m., but the 1 a.m. slot was the longest running and the most remembered time slot for the show. It was a steady, welcome friend and a fixture of WOR's Saturday night late night programming. The showcase was rested at various times for other programmings, for other programs, but most time times it was there for us. The list of movies that I saw for the first time on Fright Night could fill a book. Blood and Lace, Don't Look in the Basement, Shriek of the Mutilated, Children Shouldn't Play with Dead Things, Grave of the Vampire, Death Dream, on and on it could go. It was also a place that I was able to revisit Euro horror films that I had previously seen, such as Deep Red or 1974's Very Evil, Beyond the Door. Simply put, this was a wonderful, memorable movie showcase from my youth. It's one that I hold near and dear, and one that really gave me a good case of the creeps on a weekly basis. It's probably the one showcase I miss the most, and it's the one showcase I could think of most when I yearn for this type of programming these days. Now, all that being said, the big three monster movie showcases that I have discussed, they weren't the only showcases that featured horror films that we could gobble up as kids. As a matter of fact, pretty much any station would air horror films at some times, and you could catch them when you really least expected it. Other movie showcase programs that offered up horror films to us monster-hungry kids are as follows. The Late Show on WCBS TV Channel 2. As a matter of fact, I have fond memories of catching for the very first time on The Late Show Dr. Terror's House of Horrors. WABC TV Channel 7's The 4:30 Movie. I caught so many horror and sci-fi films on the 4:30 Movie, a bunch of Vincent Price movies, a lot of Hammer films, science fiction films. It ran the gamut and offered quite an array of horror films that you could watch after school and before or during dinner. WOR-TV's legendary Million Dollar Movie. Here I remember watching 1943's Phantom of the Opera and Alfred Hitchcock's Psycho for the very first time. And yes, I can't leave out public broadcasting, WNET Channel 13. It was on Channel 13 in the early 70s that I received my first exposure to classic silent horror films. Movies like The Cabinet of Dr. Caligari, Nosferatu, Lon Chaney's Phantom of the Opera, and Hunchback of Notre Dame. So even the PBS station had quite an impact on me growing up in the New York metro area. So there you have it, a little bit of a trip down memory lane, just to point out how lucky we were as young people growing up in our area, and the exposure that we had to horror films of all kinds. When you look back on it, that's when you realize how lucky you are. We may have taken it for granted at the time, but looking back on it, I'm very thankful that I grew up where I did and when I did, and I was able to be exposed to movies like this because it really helped to begin and shape my love and appreciation of the horror movie genre. So I do feel very fortunate. So I thank you for watching and for listening in this very special version of Fright Night Classics. I hope you enjoyed it. I hope it brought back some memories and the feelings of good times that you may have had as a youngster growing up back in the day. We will be back with our regular review videos this coming weekend. In the meantime, I thank you for watching. I thank you for showing interest in this channel, and stay tuned for regular review videos coming. And thank you once again, and have a wonderful evening.